Hello there friends and welcome once again. This is another of the demon builds that I have prepared for you, in this case a very powerful demon Kineticist character. I know it can be a bit arrogant to say that this is the strongest Kineticist build possible, but I do believe it is because as far as damage, area of effect damage, it does not get any better than with a demon Kineticist out of all of the other possible Kineticist combinations. With this build, you can deal such massive amounts of area of effect damage against all of the enemies that everything will simply explode on your path, making the already very powerful Kineticist class even more dangerous. And while it is a build focused on the synergy between Demon, Mythic Path and Deadly Earth, which can only get at level 13, as usual for all of my builds I do make builds that are viable from the early to the mid to the late game, so even at the early game, before getting Deadly Earth, you still have access to some other powerful tools to easily conquer your foes. This is also probably one of the tankiest builds in the game as far as hit points. We have a massive amount of constitution to empower our Kineticist blasts, and also some very good armor class. Never mind extreme damage of course, both single target and area of effect. So let us get started first with the build progression. Now remember, I already have a guide explaining everything you need to know really about Kineticist, such as how to use their abilities and how they work. So for this guide in particular, I'll keep it simpler. Demon is very powerful for it because of the synergy between a certain demonic rage ability and one of the strongest Kineticist powers, Deadly Earth, as I will show you later on. So let's get started. We are going with the normal Kineticist. For race human is my preferred choice as usual because of the extra feat, but you can also choose any race of your choice as Kineticist does have a lot of extra feats, and from the mid to the late game you won't really have anything to do with all of the feats you have. So pick something else if you prefer. Background is Pickpocket for the bonus to initiative. As for ability points, this is the same as my generic Kineticist. We want to focus on Constitution because it is what really increases the power of our blasts, and also allow us to accept more burn. The rest of the points can go into Dexterity. As for the 2 remaining points, they can go anywhere you want. I'll pick Strength, but you can even dump some of the other attributes and get even higher strength for dexterity. The skill points are completely up to you, and depend on what other party members you have and what skills they already cover for you. But as a Kineticist, use Magic Device is pretty useful, because it does let you use spells from other classes by casting them from scrolls. The other ones, they don't really matter, just pick the ones you like. For example, Stealth, Trickery, Perception or Mobility. I'll just go with Mobility and then Stealth. Now as far as feats, the choice is simple, point blank shot and precise shot as early as level 1 because all of our blasts are ranged attacks. There are some very powerful abilities later on you get as a Kineticist that don't have an attack roll, but for the early game we really do need these feats. Now we also have our first element choice. You might have noticed that in both my generic Kineticist guide and also my AZATA guide, I go with fire twice, fire here and then later on at level 7 when you get your second element. But for this guide in particular, I'll be going with a different choice, and this is why I'm devoting more time to this build. Because this is a build that will focus on the extremely powerful Deadly Earth ability from the mid game onwards, we certainly need the Earth element, and you can go with it first. This is not my preferred choice however, I would much rather just pick Earth at level 7. My favorite early elements choice for this character is Water, for a reason that I'm going to explain very soon as we hit level 2. But just go with Water, and for your first infusion, extended range, so your blasts can hit the enemy from far away. By default they don't really have that high of a range. And then pick Water Blast. It is a physical blast, so will target the enemy's normal armor class instead of touch armor class, unlike the Fire Blast which is energy. So by being a Water Kineticist, you can gain the extremely powerful Slick Wild Talent ability as soon as level 2. Slick is basically Grease. It does actually work the same as the Grease spell. The difference is a Kineticist has infinite uses out of it. So that's right, you can spam Grease forever as early as level 2. And I've already said this many times, but Grease is basically the most powerful of the early game spells, and it can actually last you through the whole game. That's how utterly amazing this spell can be. With it you can easily knock enemies down. Enemies that are knocked down take a -4 penalty to their melee armor class, which is huge. They lose their actions for the round, and whenever they get up, they are also hit with an attack of opportunity from all of the nearby party members. By default, the Slick ability, even though you have infinite uses of it, will only last for a single round. You can however accept 1 point of burn to extend it to 1 minute per Kineticist level, just like the normal Grease spell. Amusingly enough, this ability does have very great difficulty class that scales based on your constitution and also Kineticist power, so in the end game it can actually have more than 50 difficulty class. Despite the fact we don't have any spell focus or anything like that for Kineticist abilities. So that's a 52 difficulty class at the end game. Which is very fun, you know, because an ability that you get as early as level 1 actually has such a massive scaling power. And this can be increased even further because of the huge constitution boost you get in Balor form. The difficulty class goes to 58. Very nice considering we really don't have anything to boost this besides a very high constitution score. And even though, for example, the succubus here is immune to grease because she has wings, not all the winged demons are immune to it. The Gallo, for example, fell. Some other winged demons like the Arachnis also fall to grease, the same for the Vrox even. Now you might ask why not go with Earth, and this is honestly the main reason why I prefer going with Water for the early levels. As you might already know, I do like my builds to be viable throughout the entire game, and there's really no better ability for the early game than Slick as a Kineticist. Yes, you do have to cast this instead of using your Blast, but frankly, would you rather use your Blast to damage a single enemy, or would you rather knock multiple enemies down with Grease, which has extreme synergy with your melee party members, who will get attacks of opportunity and a big bonus to their attack rolls? The choice for me is Grease or Slick, of course. Remember, we have infinite uses of this. And you can, for example, use the Slick ability, extend it by accepting 1 point of burn. Because Grease will force the enemies to save every round, and it does linger on, you can then, after that, just keep spamming your normal Kineticist Blast for damage, so you have both damage and crowd control. As early as level 2, it doesn't get any better than that. After all, the first dungeon, well, the first real dungeon in the game only comes at level 2. Before that, you only fight the enemies in the cave, which are somewhat easy, even on unfair. Water also has the most powerful defensive abilities of any Kineticist element, the Shroud of Water, which basically gives you a very powerful scaling bonuses to either your normal armor class or your shield armor class. Shield being the best because we can just use mage armor and archmage armor to increase our normal armor class. And you can actually keep increasing the bonus you gain from Shroud of Water up to 50% by spending burn. So my demon here, for example, has 9 shield just from Shroud of Water, which is plus 5 over the normal you can get from the shield spell. Also, because we get a second element at level 7, this is a perfect point for picking Earth, and we'll still be able to benefit from all of the great Earth powers, including Bowling Infusion and Deadly Earth later on. Now, as far as the normal feat progression from level 3 onwards, this is going to be a lot similar to my AZATA or General Kineticist. But for your first level 3 feat, I would go with Improved Initiative. This is a build focused on spamming Slick or Grease in the early levels, and the sooner we can act, the faster we can grease the enemies and just shut them down. You can also go with Weapon Focus and Kinetic Blast, which I'll pick later on. For your level 3 infusion, pick Pushing Infusion. Basically, it empowers your blasts with a Bow Rush combat maneuver check. So whenever the enemy is hit by your blast, you can also attempt a Bow Rush to push them away from your characters. You might ask, why the hell are we pushing them away? Well, because whenever the enemy is pushed away, it will trigger an attack of opportunity from your allies, and later on this ability will also have great synergy with the Demonic Rage power that makes Deadly Earth so powerful, so be sure to pick it. At level 4, increase your constitution, and this is also what you increase on all of the other levels. For a level 4 wild talent, I would go with Elemental Whispers, and then the Hair Familiar to increase our initiative even further. So with the Hair Familiar and Improved Initiative we have plus 8 to initiative. Chances are our Kineticist character will act before the enemy, as to either spam Grease in the early game, or later on the very powerful Area of Effect abilities to easily defeat them, before they can even react. For level 5 you have two different choices, Weapon Focus Kinetic Blast, or the Shake It Off feat. As you might already know, I'm really a fan of Shake It Off, it can highly increase your saving throws, but your Kineticist will be mostly attacking from range, so if you don't have other ranged characters nearby your Kineticist, this feat doesn't have much of a purpose. So you can go with Weapon Focus and Kinetic Blast instead to increase our attack rolls with our blasts. As for our level 5 infusion, Kinetic Blade, we won't really use this in the early game, but later on it also has extreme synergy with the demon powers. For our level 6 wild talent, you can really go with anything. I would pick Kinetic Restoration, because this can help during the early game, as another way to restore ability score damage. Honestly, for level 7, I would go with Shake It Off. Even if you don't have that many characters nearby, it can still be of use, because during some battles your characters will start in closed areas and they will all be very close to one another. But most importantly, at level 7 we also get our second element of choice, and of course with one Earth, so we can later get Deadly Earth and now get started on our very powerful Earth feats. And at level 8 we already get our first Earth feat. We want Trip. That's because very soon we'll get an ability that, just like pushing Infusion, which causes your blasts to attempt a bow rush combat maneuver, we'll get one that lets you trip the enemy, and you can actually use them together. So trip will actually increase the power of our trip attempts to make it easier to trip the enemy with our blasts. You won't actually be using the trip feat in battle, it's just for the built-in +2 to the difficulty class. At level 9, Fury's Fall. This also requires trip, and will further enhance the power of our trips by letting us add our dexterity modifier to the final roll. As for an infusion, Bowling Infusion, and this is the one I mentioned before. With this, whenever you hit the enemy with your blast, you also get to trip them for free, using your constitution modifier instead of strength. For our level 10 wild talent, bonus feat and then greater trip to further enhance our trip rolls. For our level 11 feat, improved critical, and then kinetic blast. This makes their critical 19 to 20, and we can soon find a ring that actually doubles that, so 17 to 20, which is pretty good for a kinetic blast. As for our level 11 infusion, I would go with Wall. It's basically the first of your area of effect damage blast abilities, and can be pretty good until you get Deadly Earth at level 13. By level 12, your wild talents choice are really up to you. See, even though we only got the Earth element at level 7, by level 12 we already have the best of the Earth talents, so Trip, Greater Trip, and then Bowling Infusion. You can really pick anything you want. I would pick Tremor Sense because it does give you Blind Sight. Blind Sight does actually let you bypass almost all of the enemy concealment abilities, which is great for your blasts that require an attack roll, as our Water and Earth blasts when combined to create Mud Blast. This is the same for a level 13 onwards normal feats. You can really pick anything you want, and most of them don't really increase the power of your Kineticist, who is reliant on his blast abilities. Now, something that can be interesting to pick is the Tandem Trip feat. If you already have a pet that has it, like for example the dog or the wolf, I usually pick this on all of my dog and wolf builds. Whenever you try to trip the enemy, you get to roll twice and pick the best result. This can highly increase your chances of tripping the enemy. The only downside is that it does require you to be close to an ally that has the feat. But honestly, because your most powerful Kineticist abilities also have friendly fire, and they basically destroy the entire game by themselves, what you can do is, for example, park your dog or your wolf close to your Kineticist, have them cast Deadly Earth, and boom, that's it. Everything will just die. So I'll be picking Tandem Trip for now. But remember, you do need to have another character with this ability as well to benefit from it, as it is a teamwork feat. Now at 13, at last we also get the Deadly Earth ability. If you've played Pathfinder Kingmaker, then you already know how extremely overpowered this ability is. It is a game changer, it just destroys everything, has an area of effect. It doesn't even require an attack roll to hit, so it always hits the enemy, regardless if they have 1000 armor class on unfair, doesn't matter, they will be hit with Deadly Earth. And it does actually hit all of the winged demons as well. They don't have immunity to this, as far as this current patch at least. And the beauty of Deadly Earth is the fact that it has an amazing synergy with both the Pushing Infusion and the Bowling Infusion. By just having Bowling Infusion with Deadly Earth, whenever your Deadly Earth hits the enemies, they will also be automatically tripped. And because of the aspect of the Kalavakus demonic ability, whenever the enemy is stripped, you also get a free attack against them, no matter how far away you are. This is what makes a Kineticist demon so outrageously overpowered. And the best part is, you can actually combine both Pushing Infusion, which is also a combat maneuver, with the Bowling Infusion. So you cast Deadly Earth, the enemy takes the damage from Deadly Earth, all of the enemies really, because it does have an area of effect, and then the enemies are automatically tripped and then pushed away from you. They will be mostly tripped. Because we actually use 2 combat maneuvers with our Deadly Earth, the enemy will then be hit twice with our normal attacks. And get this is the reason we pick Kinetic Blade, because it will replace our normal attack. So not only do we hit the enemy for a massive amount of damage with Deadly Earth, we also get to trip them for crowd control, and then we hit them 2 times with our Kinetic Blade, all of the enemies that were hit with Deadly Earth. Honestly, there are no words really. You just destroy everything on your path with just this ability and the extreme synergy it has with the demon rage power aspect of the Calavakus. I mean, just try it and you'll see how extremely powerful this is. So let's pick Deadly Earth and instant I win button. And honestly, your Kineticist progression from now doesn't really matter at all because you already have the most powerful ability in the game. Considering the synergy with the demon path, you can choose whatever you want. I'll go with Enduring Earth here, but it really doesn't matter. We are already overpowered as hell. The same for your Feats choice, really. I'll just pick Toughness to increase our hit points, as Kineticists do tend to have lower hit points because of the burn that you take. Now, another choice that might be important at level 15 is your third element. I would go with Air because it does have some useful abilities, and then the normal Air Blast. For your level 16 Wild Talent, if you picked Air, I would go with Aerial Evasion, so we can gain the Evasion ability for free basically, just at the cost of 1 burn. For level 17 feat, anything you want really, doesn't matter. I mean, you can pick a skill focus for your skill of choice. Spell penetration doesn't matter for us at all because all of our blasts are physical blasts, including the Deadly Earth ability, and only the Energy Kineticist blasts actually have to penetrate the enemy spell resistance. Or you can actually go with coordinated maneuvers if you also have a pet with it, or another character with it, because it further enhances your trip power. As for another Kineticist infusion, I would go with Cloud, but like I said before, it doesn't matter. Cloud is just another way of dealing area of effect damage to the enemies, and if they ever patch Deadly Earth not to work on enemies that are winged, so winged demons, you can still use Cloud to heavily damage them. For a level 18 Wild Talent, anything goes, but I would personally choose Expanded Defense and then Enveloping Winds, to give your character quite a lot of concealment against enemy attacks. You can of course also pick this earlier, so at level 16 instead of aerial evasion, and then just use the ring that gives you evasion instead. For a level 19 feat, well, at this point in the game you should already have access to the Baphomet book that gives you 1 dice of sneak attack, so I would go with Accomplished Sneak Attacker. As for your last infusion in the game, it honestly doesn't matter. I'll just pick Blade Whirlwind here. As for your Metakinetic Master ability, I would go with Maximized, and I already explained how to use these abilities in my general Kineticist guide. Alright, so let's talk now about our Kineticist Demon Mythic progression. I would go with Instrument of Freedom as usual. There isn't a point too close to the Abyss because we aren't going to be in melee range. As for your first Mythic ability, it should be Kinetic Overcharge without a doubt to further enhance our Gather Power ability. For Mythic Rank 2, go with Mythic Improved Initiative. For Mythic Rank 3, there isn't really a point to picking Over-Infused Blasts. By now, I would rather save this for later after we get our Earth powers, and Deadly Earth especially. I would actually go with Last Stand because honestly, this is one of the best abilities in the game, and it does help your Kineticist survive, as after all, it is a game over if your main character dies. With Last Stand, you can basically cheat death for quite a lot of time, and all you have to do is rest to regain another use of this ability. For your Mythic Rank 4 ability, go with Mythic Trip. By this point we'll already have Trip from our Earth element that we pick at level 7. Just as a note, at Mythic Rank 4 you can also pick Mythic Improved Critical Kinetic Blast instead. Now for your Mythic 4 Demon Kineticist, we get our first demonic aspect, and of course we want Aspect of Calavakus for reasons that I have already explained, but basically it adds a lot of free attacks on top of our already very high damaging blasts. And because we can attack with a kinetic blade that also has insane damage, well, we are basically demolishing all of the enemies with this. For Mythic Rank 5, I would go with Over-Infused Blasts. By this point we already have Deadly Earth and also the aspect of Calavakus. With Over-Infused Blasts we can apply 2 substance infusions to our blasts, so both Bowling Infusion and Pushing Infusion. This way whenever we use our Deadly Earth, we get 2 whole free attacks on the enemy with our kinetic blade, instead of just 1, for even more crazy damage. For another demonic aspect, at Mythic Rank 5, you can go with either Succubus for the immunity to compulsion and fear for all your party members, or Incubus for an increasing damage with your kinetic blade, and also an increasing difficulty class of, let's say, your Sleek ability. I'll be going with Succubus for now because immunity to some of the most annoying status ailments that demon enemies love spamming on you is always great. Now we also have our first major demonic aspect. And the best for Kineticist is no doubt Balor. Not only because you get a very high bonus to your constitution score, so a further way of improving your blast damage and gaining more burn, but also it lets your normal demonic rage, So the +2 bonus to attack, damage, caster level, and reflex saving throws, and also difficulty class, also apply to all of your party members. So Balor aspect is very stacked. Be sure to pick it. For a second major demonic aspect, I would go with Avakia because it does increase your strength. Strength and our physical blasts, such as our kinetic blade, do target the enemy's normal armor class as if it was a physical blow. So the higher our strength, the higher our chances of hitting, although it doesn't matter that much. You might ask why I'm not going with weapon finesse. I don't find it needed for a kineticist because it is very easy to increase your strength to huge amounts because of the size increasing spells like Enlarge Person and Legendary Proportions. Also notice we don't have a major demonic aspect that increases dexterity. We can however increase our strength with Avakia. For your Mythic level 6 ability, I would go with Improved Mythic Critical and then Kinetic Blast. Just a note, Deadly Earth, because it doesn't require an attack roll to hit the enemy, you can't really critical with it. However, we can critical with our Kinetic Blade ability, which we will get as a free action because of the aspect of Calavakus when tripping the enemy with Deadly Earth. For another lower aspect at Mythic rank 6, go with Incubus to increase your damage rolls with your Kinetic Blade, and also the difficulty class of your abilities. For Mythic level 6, well, we already have the best abilities really for our Kineticist demon. You can go with Master Shapeshifter, but I don't recommend it because whenever you change into a demon form, you will lose access to your Kinetic Blade, thus highly reducing the damage of your Deadly Earth and the synergy it has with Calavakus aspect. I would just go with Archmage Armor for even higher armor class, even though chances are you won't be getting hit that much. For another major demonic aspect, Shadow Demon. And for another lower aspect, go with Shear to increase your attack bonus with your Kinetic Blade. Your Mythic level 8 ability can be anything. I would just keep it simple and go with Mythic Toughness as we do get normal toughness for even more hit points, which do help a Kineticist overcome their burn penalty to hit points. Your other aspect doesn't really matter. I would just go with Nabasu for now. Your level 9 Mythic ability is also up to you. Honestly, I would just go with Always a Chance, so we don't fail our Kinetic Blade attack rolls if you roll one. But you can overcome that easily by just casting Fortune Hacks. Besides that, if you really want to have fun with a Shapeshifter Kineticist with the demon forms, then you can pick Master Shapeshifter to benefit from the late game very powerful forms such as Merilith and Balor of course for style points, and a very high boost to Constitution. I'll actually pick it here just to show that even with the downside of not having access to your Gather Power abilities and Kinetic Blade, a Balor Kineticist can still be very fun. And any other aspect here can work. I'll just go with Babao. As for your last Mythic feat at level 10, and as a demon we do get early access to Mythic rank 10, I would just go with Mythic Sneak Attacker. By this point you already have Sneak Attack from the Baphomet book, so why not? And also aspect of anything really, I'll pick Vrock. Now at Mythic 10 we also get our Demonic Lord aspect at last. I would certainly go with aspect of Nocticula to share all of our rage powers, unlike the Balor which only shares the normal demonic rage. Nocticula can share not only the normal rage, but also all of the aspects that you have turned on at the moment, so extremely useful. And it is a free action, so doesn't cost anything in battle to use. And lastly, for a second aspect, I believe aspect of Arashka Gal is the best one for defense, but if you don't care for it, then aspect of Sokov Benov. Although we don't really have that many abilities as a kineticist that target the enemy saving throw besides let's say Slick and Grease, because our Deadly Earth doesn't really have a saving throw, and our Trip and Bow Rush attempts, well, they target the enemy's combat maneuver defense, not their saving throws. You can go with Cabriri if you want to have massive healing, but it doesn't matter that much, or also Pazuzu for one additional attack, but we won't really be attacking on melee, so overall I'll go with Arashka Gal. As far as gear for your Kineticist, you can just follow my general Kineticist guide as I explain why I picked all of these and where to find them. But when it comes to Kineticist gear, the items you really should be on the lookout for are the Greater Kinetic Diadem and earlier on the normal version. The Lesser Kineticist Rod, unfortunately there isn't a way of getting greater versions of this at the moment in the game. Unlike in Kingmaker, where we had the Tifling Twins, there's a lot more support for Kineticist gear in Kingmaker, I think. And of course, the Sigil of Destruction to further increase your blast critical range. Alright, so let's now talk about how to play this build, especially how the synergy between aspect of Calavakus and your Deadly Earth and other Kineticist abilities work from a gameplay perspective. And this can also work as a damage showcase to show you how truly insane this build can be. We activate Demonic Rage while having aspect of Kalavakus on. After that, all we have to do is use Deadly Earth or any other Kineticist ability while powered by the Pushing Infusion and also the Bowling Infusion. Let's drop our Deadly Earth somewhere around here. And everything exploded already. Just look at that. They didn't even get a chance. Oh man, look at this. So let's take the Merilith here for example. First we deal our Deadly Earth damage, which is this 2 procs of 161 damage. Because it's a composite blast, it applies the damage in 2 stacks of physical damage. After that, because of both the Bowling and Pushing Infusion and the aspect of Kalavakus, we get 2 whole free attacks on every single one of these targets that were hit by our Deadly Earth. And the best part is, we can actually use our Kinetic Blade to proc these normal attacks as a free action. And because the damage of our Kinetic Blade is already massive, this can even critical hit, which is why the poor Merilith here also got 2 whole critical hits, each dealing close to 1400 damage. That's right. And everything can be empowered further by the Maximize and Empower Kineticist abilities. I mean, just look at that. 1374 damage, Maximized and Empowered. And you can also add other extra sources of damage. I have Force and Holy here. So this single Merilith alone took what, 3000 damage from just a single action. We could even have quickened the Deadly Earth so we get to cast it twice per round. So that's what, 6000 damage. To put it simply, everything was utterly annihilated in just a single casting. Even the Mythic Baylor here. That's how powerful a Demon Kineticist can be. Also, don't forget that your Deadly Earth and some other Kineticist area of effect abilities actually have friendly fire, so you really don't want to hit your own characters with them after battle ends or during battle. If you want your characters to move to the Deadly Earth zone, all you have to do is use the Dismiss Infusion ability by going to your ability tab, then clicking it and selecting the Deadly Earth area. So now we dispel it, and it is safe for our own characters to move there. You can even hit those pesky swarm enemies with Deadly Earth, so it's a very easy way of defeating them. Man, everything almost died. Notice how the Galu Stormcaller got tripped by our Bowling Infusion Deadly Earth. And get this, we actually have a 105 modifier to our trip attempts. So honestly, you can hit even the bosses on Unfair, the late game Demon Lords, with this, because our trip modifier is simply insane. That's 105 modifier before the D20 roll, and you can actually increase it even further by reducing the enemy's armor class, which does reduce their combat maneuver defense, such as having Camellia use Evil Eye for example. And if you're wondering about the very early game, well honestly all you have to do is keep spamming Slick, because nothing will be more efficient than just constantly greasing enemies in the early game, especially the packs of enemies that are close together. You soon also get Pushing Infusion to push enemies away from you after damaging them with your blast, and proc more attacks of opportunities from party members. Don't forget you also get the Wall Power at level 11, which can make up for Deadly Earth, which only comes at level 13, and after that, well, that's when the fun really starts. Now you might be wondering, what is the difference between this guide and my general Kineticist guide? Well, that other guide is focused on, Kineticist as a whole, in a general way, explaining how the mechanics behind the class works, and there's a lot of unique mechanics for Kineticists like the Metakinesis, Feats, the element selection, all of the different infusions you can get, and so on. And it's also meant to be a generic kind of build for any Mythic path. This one, on the other hand, is fully focused on the Demon Mythic path, and the special abilities we get from it that have a lot of synergy with Kineticist. Now lastly, before I end this guide, I know some people might say, well, what if they change aspect of Kalavakus not to have this neat interaction with Kineticist? Will this build become worthless? And no, not at all. Even if we don't get all of these 2 free attacks on our Deadly Earth still remains one of the most powerful abilities in the game ever since Kingmaker. We can still deal very high damage. A Kineticist still has lots of other abilities to use. Even if they change Deadly Earth not to work on winged mobs, you can still use Cloud, Wall, and Bowling and Pushing Infusion do work with these abilities as well. You can still easily grease the enemies to death too, because we do have infinite uses for all our abilities. Even if, for example, it is changed to only get the attacks when you are near the enemies, so they fall under your reach. Even that's not going to change anything because you can just park your character behind your tank nearby the enemies while enlarged for very high reach, and then simply cast Deadly Earth where the enemies are, as to easily proc your free melee attacks against them. Alright, so this was it for my Kineticist Demon guide, everyone. I hope I managed to show you how very powerful Demon Kineticist can be, especially for area of effect damage. As usual, if you found this guide useful, then please remember to support the channel if you can by liking, subscribing, and even becoming a member for some exclusive perks. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.